and it happens a lot. Like I've heard this a lot of people say, like, oh, I was taking an English class and there was a Muslim woman who started telling me about Islam, or I was studying this thing and then we took like a module on Islam, and I'm like, wow, like there's so many people sort of discovering it through school, but you discovered it literally through editing a documentary.
I'm a revert to Islam. I am a CEO of a nonprofit, Droplets of Mercy USA, as well as the founder of Zayla Collection, a nonprofit fashion brand. So I decided to focus on why women wear the hijab, because when I was in Morocco, I wore it, but I had no understanding as the purpose behind it. I was just like, Allah, is this the right, and I probably said God at the time, is this the right religion? Please give me a sign. And I just remember shivers just going from top to bottom, like very clearly. Like I remember it like it was yesterday. And I knew it was the right religion for me. Like that, I had this just gut feeling. So I walked to the car, I was so nervous, and I just asked, like, for the first sister that I found, I said, hey, I want to convert. And I was like, I don't think anyone would have known that I wasn't Muslim because I came in hijab. I think I wore a baya, I blended in. She was like, oh my God.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. I'm Aisha Rosalie and I'm joined with Lisa Vogel. I actually met you on the Orphans, was it Orphans in Need? I can't remember the name of that charity now.
Years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we were just like, we met in Nepal and we just hung out in Nepal, and I thought you were awesome, and you just you inspired me a lot, and you always pop into my mind every now and again, and I'm so glad that we're actually sitting down having this conversation because I don't actually fully know your story.
Yeah, it's really nice to stay in touch with you. We definitely had a lot of memories in Nepal, very interesting ones, but it's a trip that I will not forget. But it's been lovely, staying in touch with you.
So can you introduce yourself briefly to people that don't know you?
Sure. My name is Lisa, and you actually pronounced my last name correctly, which is very surprising. So credit to you. I am a mom of four, actually. I have three sons and a daughter. I'm a revert to Islam. I am a CEO of a nonprofit, Droplets of Mercy USA, as well as the founder of Zayla Collection, a nonprofit fashion brand that supports domestic violence survivors, refugees, widows, and single moms. And we can talk about it later if you'd like.
Yeah, no, that's how we kind of got in touch again because I saw your collection and I was like, oh, this is nice. I really like the clothes on there. I'm really excited to receive some of them. And I was really impressed because you do so much in terms of the charity and the nonprofit sector. But I was so impressed to see that you really put in the effort to open up your own brand, and you've got sisters there who are survivors and refugees, and I was so impressed at how you managed to put all that together, mashallah.
It was several years in the making. I mean, registration alone took over 9 months, and I consulted with attorneys before I even like move forward with the idea, because I'm like, is this legally possible to create a fashion brand, but a nonprofit fashion brand? So it's an actual registered charity where, all donations support the most vulnerable communities. So I wasn't even, when I came up with the idea, I wasn't even sure if it was possible, but alhamdulillah, Allah made it happen. And I currently have a factory in Istanbul. It supports jobs for 12 Uyghur refugees, supporting 44 children. And it's not a charity where I will sit and put out this annual report where thousands upon thousands of people are helped. But most charities, I don't want to say the word most, but a lot of charities, the way they operate, they just like to claim of how many people they help versus do they actually change their lives and do they actually make an impact and bring them out of poverty. Whereas this nonprofit really focuses on financial empowerment for women in need, and bring them out of poverty so they no longer are in need of donations and they're standing on their own 2 feet.
Subhanallah, that's so amazing. It's just so amazing. I often think
All
about my
compassion.
situation as a yeah, I often think about my situation as a single mum, and I think if I become a single mum 100 years ago, like the complete difference my life would have been, or
Mhm.
even in other countries, like in this country, there's a lot in place, but in another country, as a single mum, subhanallah, just like the complete difference the situations would have been. Anyway. Alhamdulillah. I'll link that into the description in the comments, inshallah, for anyone that's interested to check that out. But let's get on to your convert story. So, were you religious before you became Muslim?
Yes, I was. Yeah. I grew up very religious and I was I mean religious is subjective, you know what I mean? But I have always been like close to God. And I think when people think about reverts that they have this like this is my perception at least that they have this like perception that we had this like life of drugs and in and out of jail. Like I've never done a drug in my life. Never smoked pot,
Mashallah.
like, people don't even believe me,
Mashallah.
and I'm like, "No, I really haven't," and I was, like, this church-going girl growing up. I even went
Mashallah.
to Young Life, which was, like, Christian camp, so I was somebody that was always attached to religion. It's just the common, eh, theme that Christians growing up question the common sense behind a lot of the teachings, so we can get into that.
Okay. Yeah, so what sparked that for you? The questioning of the common sense behind the teachings.
I mean, so I actually lived in a Muslim country when I was 19 years old, and I went just for like a cultural experience, you know, and I taught English in Morocco. And I lived
Mashallah.
with a Muslim family. And so I lived like a Muslim, but I didn't really learn why or anything about necessarily Islam. I just went along with it out of respect. So years later, I went to college and I got my degree and I decided to pick up and go into photography school. My second semester in photography school, we were asked to do a documentary of our choice. And really, the purpose behind the assignment was just to learn editing skills. That's it. So I decided to focus on why women wear the hijab because when I was in Morocco, I wore it, but I had no like understanding as the purpose behind it. And so I just did a mini documentary interviewing Muslim women on why they wear the hijab. And even though I was living amongst Muslims and I wore the hijab, I didn't understand the meaning behind it. And it really opened up my eyes once I spoke to Muslim women who I could communicate with English because when I was there, I couldn't really communicate. And I was really inspired. So I started learning about Islam on my own. And I really was like full deep in and just started learning about Islam. I watched YouTube videos. I went with imams. I read the Quran. I was like fully in. And so that's how I started learning about Islam. Not through a
Mashallah.
man, not not
Let's
because,
just get that out.
did it on my phone.
Subhanallah. Honestly, like yeah, I hear this a lot of reverts discovering Islam through some kind of reason in some kind of school system. And it happens a lot. Like I've heard this a lot of people say, like, oh, I was taking an English class and there was a Muslim woman who started telling me about Islam, or I was studying this thing and then we took like a module on Islam. And I'm like, wow, like there's so many people sort of discovering it through school, but you discovered it literally through
A
editing a
project.
documentary
Yeah,
about
exactly.
women in hijab. Subhanallah. What led you to want to do that? Because I know you've been to Morocco and you've been amongst Muslims, but why is it that you were so interested in them? I mean, I've been to other countries and I've been along among people of different faiths, but I wasn't so interested that I wanted to like make a documentary, you know?
Mhm. I mean, the more I learned about Islam, the more it made sense to me. And it actually, I kind of sometimes cringe when people are like, it's just common sense. You know what I mean? No, because I think like religion, you need
Yeah.
more than just common sense. You know what I mean? Because there really needs to be the faith within your heart, the one that you just can't put into words. And that faith in God was there for me. It's just the problem is the theology contradicted. And I think when we grow up in and I would say that this is the problem within Muslims too, that when there's certain teachings and they actually go against Islam of the teachings because it's so cultural, like it's so based on culture and
Mm,
not Islam, they don't question it. You know what I mean?
mm,
Uh, where a lot of the teachings that I had in Christianity, you just accepted. And I think I accepted even more so because it's very fear based. And this is not to put anybody down in the religion that I grew up in. It's just my experience. It was a
Mhm.
very fear-based, upbringing, not from my parents, but from the religion, that
Mhm.
if you don't believe this, you're going to hell. If you don't believe this, you're going to hell.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And so it's just ingrained in you from a child. So you naturally, just subconsciously, don't question things when it doesn't make sense. For instance, what about a child? What do they go to heaven or hell? Because did they accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior? What age difference does it tell you that it's now they're
Mhm.
capable of, making their own decisions? Islam answers that question. Okay. And it's very
Mm.
clear as day that all children go to heaven. Islam answers that contradiction within Christianity. And then the most obvious part, which I never questioned my whole life, never thought about it, and then you almost are kicking yourself, is to like, okay, do you worship Jesus or do you worship God? And you're like, well, both. You know what I mean? And there's this back and forth. You're like, well, if that's the case, then did God put himself on the, did he crucify himself? Does he need to
Yeah.
sacrifice himself to forgive
Yeah.
you if he created you? And so these things that are just so like, eye-opening and but so obvious, you never questioned growing up. You just accepted it. And so once
Mm.
those questions started coming to me, I really was it was a whole new like experience for me and eye-opening that I couldn't look at Christianity the same, and Islam answered all of my questions.
Mm. I completely understand what you're saying there in terms of Islam being so strong as an intellectual argument. Um, and it's really interesting because I'll also see a lot of Christians or even non-Muslims saying things like, "Oh, Islam like is makes sense in terms of an intellectual argument," but it doesn't mean you accept it. It doesn't mean you become Muslim because of what you're saying about the belief. Because I think there's a big difference between Islam in your head and Islam in your heart.
Mhm.
And the intellectual arguments, they can stand really strong in your head, but to make that move to your heart, to actually the belief that you were talking about, is quite a big move. Before I go into that, I do want to ask one question about the hijab, because growing up in America, did you not find hijab to be oppressive when you saw women wearing
Oh,
hijab, when you went to
hands down, yes. Sorry. No, no question. Like, don't even need to go further with your question. But yeah, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so when you saw women wearing hijab and stuff, were you not like curious, like, are these women oppressed? Like, what are they? Why are they doing this? Why? What man is making them do this? With these thoughts not going through your head?
It was definitely ingrained in me that it was a form of oppression and, they're not liberated. And I mean, but when I went to Morocco, it was still always in me to respect others. So it wasn't like I was this like Islamophobe or anything. Um, but it definitely was in my head, in the back of my mind, although not overtly, that these women are oppressed, But I absolutely had a lot of those views. Even in the questions when I prepared like my interview of asking why women wear the hijab, I think looking back, and I can't remember specifics, but I do remember that they were very ignorant questions that I'm glad I asked because I was very like, opened up my eyes. But we have this perception that the more you reveal, the more liberated you are. Whereas, liberation comes down to freedom to choose whether to cover and show the world of how much I want them to see my body. That is liberation, is when I have the freedom to choose to wear the hijab or not wear the hijab. And it's very clear as day that we are supposed to be, but it's also free will as well. So it's our choice to whether or not to follow the religion or not.
Mm. Was that a hard process for you, changing your view on that?
Um, I'm somebody that is very like I hold things with conviction. So once my eyes are open, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And I had no problem admitting it. And I took it completely like, okay, I really get where you're coming from, and my eyes are open. So once I made that decision, it was easy for the belief to come that this is the right way to live. Um, it was not easy to put on the hijab. I did it, but it wasn't easy. It was a very emotional day for me. And I remember, and I don't want to say it's because I never should compare my experiences to others, but if I had to think about it, I would say it's a little bit harder for somebody like you or me, who is not visibly Muslim, if we were to not wear the hijab,
Mm.
blend in with regular society, and no one knows us as Muslim, and all of a sudden you change your appearance, okay? And now you have to explain to the world what changes you made in your religious life. And I know we should say, "Oh, we need to have conviction in Islam," and, but that's not easy when we're stepping into a new faith because we have
Yeah.
our family to explain our lives to, we have our friends to explain, what changed in our life, and we suddenly have to put our personal belief on display and answer to the rest of the world, whether we like it or not.
Mm.
And I walked into school, this is in photography school in college, and, my friend who was kind of my photography partner, we did a lot of editing together, just started laughing at me, and it broke my heart. And I think I probably cried a little bit, but even though it was hard, I pushed through. And I didn't wear the hijab full time because I was, like, waitressing, while in school to kind of pay the bills and go to school during the day. So I would take the hijab off at night and put it on in the middle of the day. I felt this hypocrisy within me that I felt like I was being almost a fake Muslim because I was taking it off. And then, someone gave me advice that, it's better to sin half the time than all the time.
It's better
Uh,
to try.
it's better to try. And so I kept it on during the first part of the day. And I'm glad I did because I believe if you walk towards Allah, Allah runs towards you.
Yeah,
And,
of course.
it was a stepping stone to be able to wear the hijab full time, and that's why we have to be very careful with hijab shaming and, all those comments, like, online and oh, there goes the the sound in the back.
Sorry. Yeah,
You're
I wanna step in.
we
This
have to be
this
very
guy just won't
careful.
leave us.
No, I actually have a contractor in my house too, so we might hear it on my end too.
Okay. No, no.
Um we have to be very careful with hijab shaming because, like, instead of encouraging people towards Islam, those comments and put downs will only push people away, and you do not want that on your book of deeds of pushing someone
No
away from
way. Yeah,
so.
yeah, yeah. It's not one or the other. It's always a journey
Mhm.
towards good or towards bad. And you always want to make sure you're working towards good as much as possible. Never
Absolutely.
one step. Well, sometimes we take steps back, but always trying our hardest to take steps forward. Um, what was your Shahada experience like?
Uh, it's always hard to I feel like I was asked to tell some friends, like, the other day. I should have saved it for today, so I felt like it was, like, fresh to tell.
It's okay.
Um it actually, like, when I explain it, I'm like, it almost sounds, like, too good to be true, but, it was the Friday before Ramadan, I think in 2011, like, it's been, like, a long time. Like, I think I even forgot the year,
Subhanallah.
but it's been a long time. And I went, to Jummah prayer, and I listened to the whole khutbah, and I did the prayer with them, and I sat in the masjid after Jummah. And I was really kind of just thinking, like, is this the right religion for me? Am I ready to convert? And so I walked outside and I sat in my car and I prayed. And I was just like, Allah, is this the right, and I probably said God at the time, is this the right religion? Please give me a sign. And I just remember shivers just going from top to bottom, like, very clearly. Like, I remember it like it was yesterday. And I knew it was the right religion for me. Like, that I had this just gut feeling. So I walked to the car, I was so nervous, and I just asked, like, for the first sister that I found. I said, "Hey, I want to convert." And I was like, I don't think anyone would have known that I wasn't Muslim because I came in hijab. I think I wore a baya, I blended in. Um, and she was like, oh my God, oh my God. You know what I mean? Like she started getting like, so excited and I had no
I can
idea
imagine.
the spectacle that happens at masjids for new reverts. Like
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this is a lot. Like, what's going on? So I was expecting just to be like the imam and me or whatever, and then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
like,
She pulls like a
that was like,
megaphone and she's like, Revert.
oh my God, literally, I was like, I was like so confused. Like, because I had never witnessed it before, and so I was like very like, why is everyone so excited? Like, and so, because it was like I literally asked her, and then the next thing you know is I go to like she asked to go to the men's side, and the whole masjid like was in circle around me, and I just remember doing the Shahada in both English and Arabic, and I, when I closed my eyes and I repeated after the imam my Shahada, it felt like Allah had like vanished everybody in the room, and it was just me and Allah, and I just had
Mm,
tears just running down my eyes, and it was like when I woke up, it was like I had entered into a whole new world, and it's a feeling
mm,
I will never be able to describe, a feeling that sounds unreal, but I know it happened. Um, and it's a moment that I look back to from time to time, and I think Allah chose me. You know, like how blessed am I out of the billions of
mm.
people that I was chosen. I have to be the best Muslim I can be. So what a blessing it is to be chosen for Islam. So yeah.
Subhanallah. That is so beautiful. I love that so much. I personally didn't I declared my shahada during COVID, so I didn't get like the whole Muslim Allahu Akbar experience.
You probably got a lot of mashallah online though.
I wasn't online. I started my channel like 6 months after becoming Muslim. I literally was just me in a room like by myself, just declaring my shahada. Like there was no, there was
Do you
nothing.
get to
But
witness
yeah,
it now in masjids with other Muslims and how they're like the phones are out and everything and like
oh, I've seen the videos. Like I've seen the videos, and I could just imagine. I could just, oh my god, I could just imagine you saying to that woman, like, "I want to be Muslim." I could just imagine her, like, literally, like,
oh my God,
shouting,
I
and then,
was not
like, all these
expecting.
people going, like, "Allahu Akbar," and the police coming past, like,
That's literally what
looking at
happened.
you guys.
I wanted to like later on out something that I want to address is like almost title something Islam Day 2, Revert Day 2 because everyone's there day 1
Mm,
and like they're there to witness the shahada, but how many do you think actually go up to the Muslim and they're like, here's my number, let me help you with everything?
mm,
How many of them do that? You know what I mean? Because we talk
yeah.
about Islam and we talk about converting to Islam and the numbers converting to Islam, but we don't talk about how many people are leaving Islam. And
Mm,
I really think it's because of the lack of support. At the same time, everyone's lives are busy and we all have, you know, our own daily stresses. So we can't always just expect the community to pick up everybody and be able to take responsibility for every revert. But I do think that we can be doing better and creating that
this is
support.
um this is really interesting you said that because I have a lot of experience speaking with a lot of like Muslims and ex-Muslims and reverts and lots of people because I've been doing this for a while now. And every single time I speak to somebody who left the religion, or who left it and then came back again, they always say it was because of a Muslim. They never give me a reason like, oh, I decided the Quran wasn't real, or I didn't like Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because anyone who actually learns about his life actually falls in love with his character. It's always reasons of like, oh, actually, uh, this person like really wronged me, and I really am so
Was
broken by it. Hmm?
yeah, it's real. You know, uh, like have, you know, I obviously speak to a lot of women who have gone through abuse as I am a domestic violence survivor. One of the questions I'm asked is, you know, well, I'm surprised you didn't leave Islam. And the answer for me is very clear is I didn't choose Islam for a man. I will not leave Islam for a man. But I also take into account the feelings that, you know, other survivors have and the trauma that's associated with it. because there's often spiritual abuse that is combined with other forms of abuse. Like, for
Yeah.
instance, my ex who did abuse me physically, financially, spiritually, like in every way possible. I just remember even like going to like Jumu'ah, and it was like if you're not out the door, like at the time, he'd be screaming at the top of his lungs, and Islam says that you're supposed to run to the masjid during Jumu'ah. You know what I mean? Like, and everything was fear based. Everything was just like this abusive behavior, and I understand why there's this association, but I also want to tell everybody that that is not Islam, and
Mhm.
don't give them that
Mhm.
power to take away your deen. Don't give them that.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You deserve to be close to Allah, so do not give them that power. And so that's something I like to remind other survivors.
Definitely, definitely. I think a lot of people who go through this, they face a lot of issues in terms of a controlling partner, a partner that's very controlling, and then when they're inshallah finally freed from that, I think it is important to remember that if you are letting them still make those major decisions in your life in terms of whether you're religious or not, you're still giving them control.
Mhm.
Like if you're saying, okay, I'm not Muslim anymore because of him, you're still giving him control over your life.
Yeah,
Because when we start to blame others, we're giving them the steering wheel to our life. I think that's important to remember. And subhanallah, let's go into
definitely
that
blame them
experience
for
a
the
little bit.
oh, sorry. I was gonna say
Hmm?
definitely blame them for the trauma you endured, you know? That
Yeah.
is 100% on them. But I mean that they don't deserve, to take your deen away. They don't deserve it. You know what I mean? You deserve it. So that's what I mean by that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go into that a little bit with what you experienced. Because there are other women experiencing this, and it is a very sensitive topic. And there are women who come to me a lot, even on Instagram, saying they've been through something like this. And there is a stereotype that exists. I don't think it's as bad as the West makes out. Like, I don't think every single Muslim couple goes through this, but there's no doubt that there are Muslim couples that do go through this domestic violence. So let's discuss like what happened there. Yeah.
Well, I did get married right away. I would say maybe a year after taking my Shahada. Didn't know him when I took my Shahada. Um and I rushed into it. And this is not to victim blame, but I always want to put a warning out to other women that definitely take your halal time. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to become a 5-year dating situation, but take enough time to where you're really getting to know their character. Because people can only put on the facade for so long and they start to reveal themselves. So it is good to, I would say, between the three to at least 3 months to really get to know them at least. And that's a bare minimum. Uh, but I did get married right away and pregnant right away. And the signs of abuse started, I would say, 1 week into marriage. And looking back, I didn't realize it was abuse. It was forms of control. Okay. And abuse is two things, it's power and control. And it doesn't have to be physical, although mine was very physical. And the first thing that he did was I had a clothes of Pakistani clothes in my closet, and I had gotten them just to be able to go to weddings. And I went out for a jog, and when I came back, he had gotten rid of all of them, got rid of all of the Pakistani clothes. And it was a lot of money worth of it. And I was really upset. I was like, why would you just give this away? And he's like, I don't want you to have them. And it was no rationale. He just gave it away. And it broke my heart. But you don't get divorced over something like that, right? You might get into an argument,
Mm.
but you don't necessarily get divorced, okay? And so that's how abuse works, is it's small little, steps toward, and it gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse. And every single time there's something done to you, they kind of chip away at your spirit and your soul and your sense of being, and they want to tear you down and they want to take away everything from you. Um, and then until you don't even know who you are, and that's what happened with me. The first time, he would get angrier and angrier, and I was dealing with a lot of stress, like, while I was pregnant, and he was super financially abusive as well. He wouldn't buy any furniture, had to sleep up on a blow-up bed, and he had the money. He made a lot of money. And, the first time he hit me, it was, 2 months after the birth of my son, Ilyas, my first son, and, he hit me to the ground and I knocked out.
Oh my
And
God.
most people would just up and leave, but I'm thinking, "I just had a baby. I can't support myself. I gave up everything." And, so you try to make it work, and 2 days later, "He's so sorry. He'll never do it again." And, that's the way a lot of abusers are, is they will abuse you with whatever form it might be. Um, you go through the remorseful stage, "I'm so sorry, I'll never do it again." Then you go through the honeymoon stage, "You're the most amazing person ever." And then another form of abuse happens. And, I had been hit, strangled, glass thrown at me, head banged
Oh
against the
my God.
wall. Like, I lost a child, due to miscarriage because,
Oh my God.
he was beating me during pregnancy and, during the
Mhm.
second and third pregnancy. My second came out amazingly healthy, alhamdulillah. The third,
Mhm.
I did miscarry and drove
Oh
myself to the
God.
hospital and was alone. And you would have thought that that's the straw, right? That's the straw. But when you're in it, it's so hard to leave. It is so hard to get out because that's what they want to do. They want to take every bit of strength and power that you have. And so they have you under full, complete control. And that's what he did. Um, and then finally, one day, I had finally just said enough. No more. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. Enough. And I waited till he was at work, and I packed up everything I could and took whatever cash was in the home, and I drove from Texas to Florida over the course of, like, 2.5 days. And, uh, he did we didn't talk for about a week, and I was very frightened. I had no idea what I was gonna do, how I was gonna put a roof over my head, how I was gonna take care of the kids. I had no idea. Um, but he finally agreed to get help and pay for, an apartment in Florida, and, um he was like, I'm gonna change," because for the first time, I was like, "I'm not going back. I'm not going back." Because a lot of, abuse survivors, they leave and go back, they leave and go back, and I think statistically it's somewhere between 7 and 11 times, and then oftentimes they don't make it out
Mm.
after that. So he agreed to get help, but, it doesn't and nothing changed. He's still just as much of a very abusive person and, has continued his abuse, thankfully not with me, but yeah, and so it's my life mission to help other women and to know that it is very hard when you leave. It is very hard, and, the road is very long and rocky, and it's not a rosy picture, and outside of, when you leave, it actually does get worse, and you question yourself, and you're like, "Should I just go back and get abused?" Because at least my kids will have a roof over their head. But I can tell you that it's worth it. Getting out is worth it because, you don't stay for the children, you leave for the children. Because I was gonna break a
Wow.
cycle no matter what it was gonna take.
Wow, subhanallah. I can't even I can't even like I know when I first become Muslim and I started learning about the religion, I thought and then I started looking into some Muslims and some specific people who've done some very horrific things and you just think, how is that like how do the two go together? Like it just doesn't work. How can Islam go with somebody who does things like that? Like how it just doesn't make sense in my head how the two can go together. what advice would you give to people that are listening to this right now and they're just like, Muslim, like a Muslim person did this, like how is that even possible?
I mean, like all faiths, you're going to have good people and you're going to have bad people. Islam is perfect. People are not. Um, and we're not talking about, in this case, we're not talking about just a non-perfect person. We're talking about an abuser, one that, hurts
Yeah.
people. Um, and to pretend that it doesn't happen in our community, you are enabling them, okay? And you are not solving the problem, and you're only making the problem worse by not addressing it. To be embarrassed to talk about it in this community, you are, again, not solving the problem, you are enabling it, maybe not intentionally. But we need to stop pretending that, Muslims are perfect and this doesn't happen. It does happen, and it doesn't exist. It does exist in our community, along with sexual abuse, financial abuse, spiritual abuse, physical abuse. We need to stop pretending that it doesn't happen, because it does. It's rampant in our community. It's not anymore I mean, I don't want to say statistically, but it's definitely just as much in our community as it is others, and we need to address it. However,
Mm.
Islam, we need to be better. It shouldn't be that it's just the same statistics. We should be doing better.
Of course.
And we can never, I know I'm not really directly answering your question, but we can never fix the problem if we're not willing to talk about it and stop feeling shame to talk about it. Um,
Mm.
we also make the victim and the survivor the one as if they're the ones supposed to be quiet.
Mm.
When why is it that they should feel an ounce of shame? Because it's not what they didn't do anything. It was done to them, not they weren't the
Mm.
ones that were the perpetrator. The perpetrator
Mm.
should have the shame, not the victim.
Mm.
So I don't feel an ounce of shame. I don't feel an ounce of embarrassment. This happened to me, and you know, I'm gonna I believe I rose above it. But to answer why, there's good people and there's bad people in every religion, color, ethnicity, culture, but we need to be better.
Did it did it not shake your faith in terms of, especially the spiritual abuse, things like shouting at you like you need to hurry up because Allah commands this, things like that? Did it not shake your faith when you came out the other side?
I definitely like had a moment where I did go down like a wrong path a bit. I always kept my hijab. I always stayed on prayer,
Inshallah.
but my deen wasn't as strong. Um I did have that. Um but I would also say it's the faith that kept me solid. It's the faith that
Hmm.
got me up in the morning and kept my spirits high, and it was what was able to get me through it in those like really difficult times. And again, I think the most difficult time was the post separation abuse. Very scared all the time, constant threats, constant, I'm going to take the kids away from you. I lived in such fear. But I was slowly able to like heal, and I was slowly able to like come out of the other side. And I think it's the religion that is what got me through it.
Mm, mashallah. Yeah, I can see, of course, how that would be. Do you have any advice for somebody who has gone through something really difficult with a Muslim person and their faith has been shook by it?
I think it goes back to the question that I answered before, is don't they took so much of you. They took
Yeah.
your feeling of self-worth. They took your possibly your career, because you possibly could have given it up for them. They took your spirit and your smile away. I say to them, you deserve to have that and more. And you deserve to have all that back. Do not let them take your deen. Do not let them take that.
Mm.
So
Yeah, because in those moments when things are really tough, I think you need it the most. When you're going through those really tough times is when you really, really, really need Islam in your life, because it just gets crazy dark if you don't, I think personally.
Absolutely. It's truly what got me through everything is my faith, you know?
Mm,
Um, and the Muslim community too, because as much as the community, um, really needs to stop sweeping this under the rug, it was also the Muslim community that was there to help as well. And so I think if I was not a part of the Muslim community, I wouldn't really have a community to turn to really kind of get the support that I needed. So it was equally as like there in my time in need too. I had a masjid to go to for zakat funds, and I had other Muslim people that was able to really step up and help, and organizations that helped. It's
mm.
unfortunately not enough, but it was, well, I don't mean that as far as the individual help. The individual help I got was just so beyond, like, life-saving. But I mean, as far as the organizations, we really could step it up, and help women in need. So
I think one thing I just want to speak about quickly, so the spiritual abuse. I think there are a lot of people that maybe go through spiritual abuse, but maybe they're not having like the other types of abuse. Because I just want to touch on this topic quickly. Someone who's getting like spiritual abuse in their relationship, it can really turn them off from Islam. You know,
mhm.
the example you gave, I can't really think of any examples from my head, but I'm sure there are many of them. What advice would you give someone that's going through spiritual abuse? Because especially with reverts, a lot of Muslim women, they don't really feel like they have the right to turn around and be like, okay, this person's been Muslim a long time. They're telling you this is about Islam, but then you're actually hearing from a scholar that it's very different. And it's like, how do you like juggle that?
I think when a lot of the times we hear, like, you know I'm your husband and this is what I command. And like in a healthy and normal marriage, yeah, there is the respect of the husband. This the normal respect.
Of course.
But when they're asking you to do things that goes against Islam, you are always supposed to, uh, you know, turn towards you were supposed to be like turning towards Allah, and nothing should ever contradict of what Allah is asking you, because at the end of the day, that is above your husband. Okay.
Mm,
Um, Now, if it comes to just having anger, making everything fear-based, and, it's a really tough one because when you're in the environment, it's not easy to just, put a wall up. We're human, and to not associate with it, but, just reminding themselves that it's not a part of Islam, and that's not what Islam teaches. It's hard to give
yeah.
advice on that because, it all depends on, like, their situation and how bad it really is. If it's something that can be tuned out, or if it may be something it can be, and it's something that needs, um, more help, but I definitely would I'd try to seek outside help if it's needed.
Yeah, this is just something that I see a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot with revert sisters. Um, like going through some kind of spiritual abuse in terms of like this is what Islam commands, and sometimes it's like not even from the religion at all.
Right. I don't know.
Honestly, there are certain channels that I've had to obviously I'm not going to mention, but there are certain channels that I've had to what's it called on YouTube where there's like these they literally I've had to like block it, but block it to an extent where I'm literally asked YouTube to never show this to me ever again.
Oh, that sounds
because
funny. I need to
because I
learn
find it
something.
so triggering. I find it so triggering,
Yeah.
and like as a revert, especially, like I feel like it's really important to if something is triggering if something's triggering me, like in my religion, if some people are like really triggering me, I have to like stay away from it as much as possible because my religion is so important to me. But I don't want to have those like feelings of like, what is this person saying?
the
Yeah.
the the test is on their mentality is if all of a sudden they're listening to us talk about abuse and they're like getting mad and they're like, well, what about the women that, like, if they get angry at that topic, then they're
Mm.
probably one that need to check their mentalities just a little bit. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
yeah. It's the
I've
mentality is
I like the last time I saw one of the videos from one of these people that like triggers me, I looked at the comments and it just had loads of people saying like, every time I watch one of your videos, I feel less close to Islam. Like all these people saying this
Like,
stuff.
what are you doing? Right. Like, you're not helping people in Islam if you are giving, you know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
yeah, I could go on all about that. No
Yeah,
names.
me too. Of course, no names. Of course, no names. Of course, no names. Yeah, we've become like there's a little bit of like of a joke in the community in terms of like the amount of gossip, the amount of backbiting, the
Mhm.
amount of all that stuff that goes on online. It's just like it just makes me so sad.
Yeah, people are like that. I just say, "Get a hobby," you know? You need to fill their times a little bit better.
Yeah, it's becoming like it's the way the algorithms are. So like a lot of people are becoming algorithm slaves where like the algorithms love controversial content. So they'll literally like just be posting anything controversial, anything gossipy, anything backbitey, just to get the algorithm to notice them. And it's really not from our religion at all.
It's not, no. It's so sad.
Mm, yeah.
So, culture needs
That's
to
the
change.
that's the like end note of this.
Yeah, culture
But
needs to change for sure.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for coming on anyway. We discussed a lot.
But it was
Okay,
lovely seeing
bismillah.
you and talking to you again.
Yeah. Yeah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.